Tonight we have a IBEW member who identifies himself as Brother Vegas, who's joining us. We're going to discuss several issues concerning the IBEW. Right now, a current hot topic is this CECW program, the Construction Electrician, Construction Wireman program. We want to figure out if we can find out what this is and what it's all about, and answer some questions, and hopefully provide a little bit of enlightenment here and there. I just want to forecaution everybody before we start that we don't have all the answers. We don't have all the information. We're just taking a stab at this. We're trying to get a few things out there where people can listen to, and this is certainly not the end of it. This is like a symposium type affair. If there's people who have other information, people who have contrary information, adverse information, if what we're saying is not true or correct, we'd love to hear from you. We want to nail this down. We want to get this right. So we're going to be slow. We're going to be patient. We're going to go through this thing. And we're going to see what we can come up with here. Right now, we got the brother on the line. Brother, you want to say hello?
I sure do. Thank you, Brother Fine Line. I'd like to say hello to all the brothers listening out here on this. And like you said, this is not necessarily a solution or an end-all. This is just my ideas and what I've seen in my own experiences. That's what I'd like to talk about. And I'd like to also thank you personally for your efforts here and what you're doing, because you're going above and beyond. You're going much further than just writing on a website, writing your thoughts out. You're actually trying to bring this to the masses and something they can listen to, like on the way to work or on the way home, something like that. You know, this is really good. I just like to appreciate it and thank you for it.
Well, it's lots of fun, believe me. Get to talk to lots of people and get to hear my own mouth run. So that's it's not all a labor, believe me. Anyway, on this CWCE program, or CECW, can you tell us what it is?
Yes, I can, actually. I've looked up some stuff on the internet, and I found something out of Florida, and actually it's linked off the Minuteman website. I used to think that it was alternative names for the same classification, and it's not. There are two separate classifications. One of them is a construction wireman, one of them is a construction electrician. And it's for guys who have less skills and less training than somebody who could be organized in as an inside wireman. Well, I'll give you an example here. The construction wireman goes anywhere from 40% of the inside wireman's rate to 60%. They top out at 60%. And then the construction electrician goes anywhere from 70% to 80% of the inside wireman's rate.
Brother Vegas, I mean, that's the insidious part of the whole thing to me. It's identified as two separate classifications, but if you read the fine print, it appears that one is like an apprenticeship for the other. Somebody can start at entry level and be called a construction wireman at 40% of scale and work 1,000 hours or so, then become a CW2, CW3. Is that what you're reading?
That is what I'm reading, and
okay.
I'd like to know how this differs from an actual apprenticeship.
I'm just wondering, is this really, it's just one classification disguised as two? That's what it looks like to me. A CW starts out at entry level, works his way up, and comes at the other end of CE, and at that point he has an opportunity to upgrade to the journeyman level, I think after 14,000 hours or something, and it looks like they've turned a 4-year apprenticeship into a 7-year apprenticeship.
Yeah, kind of like an indentured servant.
Okay, if you want to go there.
Well, not only that, I can't help but just notice the smack in the face we get on this. Because they start out as a wireman and become an electrician. Okay, if you're organized into the IBEW, you start out as an electrician, you become a wireman. I think even the terminology is an insult, but you know, maybe I'm nitpicking here. I don't know.
Well, I know if you go into the Constitution of the IBEW, we're divided into four basic branches, and one's the outside, the inside. I think communication workers and railroad workers are the four branches, and in the inside they have a classification called wireman. Now it seems like this wireman classification is being broken down even more. It's going from, we have inside wireman, we have residential wireman, we've had intermediate journeyman, and now we got this construction wireman, construction electrician. I mean, it's like it's really getting fractured.
Well, let us don't forget they also have techs, and installers.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the bigger
Yeah.
locals do. I don't know if they all do.
But those different ones are spelled out, but I'm just talking about the wireman itself is so fractured. It's like, is there a divide and conquer strategy in place?
That's what it looks like to me. And also there's education is the key to success in life. And if you can institute a program where you're only partially educated, then your opportunities are limited as well. You know, it's like they're engineering a failure into this thing. Well, I can't go to that job because I can't run rigid conduit, or I can't go to that job because, you know, I don't know how to run Romex or MC cable. I mean, there's all kinds of, like you said, fractures, but I think there are limits on education as well.
Brother Feinon, let me play you a segment of how they introduce this thing. Let's see, maybe you can comment on this for a minute.
Sure.
In the low bid gets the job world that we live and work in, you have to do everything you can to continue to compete, especially when you factor in the wage and benefits packages IBEW journeymen and apprentices earn. Sometimes this puts NECA contractors at a competitive disadvantage when it comes to bidding a job. Over the last couple of years, the NECA IBEW team has done some serious work to ensure their future success. They've taken a step back, looked at what's working and what's not, where they've been successful and where they haven't. One region which was in need of some serious attention was the Southeast, specifically North and South Carolina. That is where our story begins.
Brother Vegas, you just heard that, and they're talking about the need to compete, and they act like it's a regional thing in the Southeast, like Florida and the Carolinas. But we know that it's spread into other states now. I think we know that it's in Maryland and Virginia. It's in Georgia, which is between North Carolina and South Carolina and Florida. We know it's in Oklahoma and Texas and other states, Ohio even. So
It's in Missouri, it's in Nevada. It's all there. Yeah, you're right. It's not just in the Southeast.
and they talk about the team, the IBEW NECA team, and they talk about the need to compete. You know, we right now we're probably in the midst of a great global realignment financially. You know, the markets are down, banks aren't lending money. Do we need to do something different than what we're doing?
I think that this is going to become a permanent solution to a temporary problem or an unsolvable problem, depending on where you're at in the country. Right now, nationwide, nobody's working. There's, you know, the books are loaded up everywhere, and you can call this a cycle if you'd like. Cycles are predictable. This thing came kind of out of the blue. I mean, if you paid attention to what was going on at the banks a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, and foreclosure rates, you saw it coming. But it's not going to exist this way always. It can't. You know, times will always go bad and good, but when you slash your wages in half in the bad times, it's a long, hard uphill fight to get back where you started from to begin with. You know, and another thing that they bring up the region of the Carolinas and Florida. Okay, those, for all intents and purposes, those were lost regions to us anyway. I mean, you know, it may be a huge admission to say that, but if you travel very much, you're always going to run into somebody from the Carolinas, and you're always going to run into somebody out of Florida because they don't have enough work to keep their wiremen working at home. And I don't think it's because of the economy so much as the classism that exists back there. You know, everybody wants to, you know, point fingers and say that the IBEW makes too much money. Well, in whose mind and in whose eyes? You know, the IBEW is designed to give us a better quality of life, a better wage.
Okay.
And, okay, go ahead.
I think I'll follow what you're saying. In the interest of collective bargaining, and the idea is that, you know, people determine their wage rates in their local areas. It seems like there's some higher force that's determining the wage rates in the local areas of North Carolina and South Carolina and Florida and the other states that are now involved. What does this do to collective bargaining at the local level when somebody has a conference in a place like, say, Scottsdale, Arizona, and tells the people in Florida what they're going to do?
Oh, it splits up cohesiveness.
And it seems like the people in those areas, that they have no control over what's in their agreement, and they're the ones that are responsible for the collective bargaining.
That's right. We're the ones who built this union. Of our efforts, our sacrifices, and on our backs. And they come around and say, well, you're getting paid too much. Okay, and another thing, they talk about the competitive, competitive aspects of this. Public works jobs, or anything major industrial that has federal funds in it has got to be the prevailing wage anyway, so they're diluting their own wage by doing this. They say, well, they're allowing these CEs and CWs into this thing. Those wages will factor into the federal prevailing wage nationwide.
So it will systematically lower wages in any region where this program becomes prevalent.
It absolutely will, yes.
I was reading the agreement they made there, and I noticed that it's comprehensive. It's more comprehensive than you would look at for something to just be a pilot program or a solution to introduce union labor into an area, because they've already got the 3% NEBF contribution coming out of the wage package. They've got portability in it. It looks like something that they're looking long-term at for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Another thing I'd like to bring up here, out of that video, she spouted out a lot of statistics, and some of the other guys featured in that video spouted out statistics. And have you ever heard the old expression, there are lies, damn lies, in statistics?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, if they say our membership has grown by 32% in the Carolinas, okay, well, 32% of how many?
Let me play that to you, part of it to you, in fact, because I think that's an interesting point. Let's nail that down for a minute. Are you ready for this?
I sure am.
Since the Carolina Initiative began, IBEW's membership numbers have gone up by 32% in both states. We'll be right back. In the low bid gets the job world that we live and work in, you have to do everything you can to continue to compete, especially when you factor in the wage and benefits packages IBEW.
Okay, I'll cut it off there. We heard that she said it increased the membership 32%, but it did increase the inside wireman membership 32%, did it?
No, it did not.
No, it's like we're bringing in a second and third tier workforce, and it seems like it's unlimited in its numbers too.
And a second and third class, and now wait a minute, we can't say that, because actually it is limited in its numbers.
And how is it limited?
In this Florida agreement, well, not limited in the numbers of C's and CWs that the Hall can drag in off the street, but it is limited in ratios, and I love this. They have a ratio of 4 to 1 between one journeyman wireman and up to 4, they call them different levels. Mm-hmm. Okay, they include apprentices with this. So you can have one journeyman and up to 4, take your pick out of apprentices, construction electricians, and construction wiremen. So, the typical crew of today, or of yesterday at least, was made up of, a foreman, 10 journeymen, and say maybe three apprentices. Now they're saying the typical crew is going to be one inside wireman foreman. He's going to have 2 inside journeymen underneath of him. And underneath those 2 inside journeymen, you're going to have 4 construction electrician, construction wiremen. That we're still to be responsible for their work. We're still to train them, because if we don't welcome them in with open arms. We're going to be labeled the radicals.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to get sent down the road.
In that particular video you're talking, no, I'm talking about in the document that you're talking about. They did mention that they would have to have inside wiremen for every 4 or 5 of the other classification, the CECW.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how much they would adhere to that. Let me play this to you and see what you think of this.
A huge part of the Carolina Initiative is the CWCE worker allows the NECA contractor to be more flexible with his IBEW workforce. A more flexible workforce translates directly into being more competitive with open shops.
Cut.
Working real well.
Okay. You know what else that translates into?
What?
Less wiremen on the job, less inside wiremen on the job.
Right.
They try to sugarcoat and paint this thing as, as just a wonderful, amazing thing. Maybe it is for the contractors. Maybe it is for the guys back in the IO who get their living off of their, IO dues coming in, the NEBF, all those things. It ought to be wonderful for that, because they got more guys out there working on half wage, still paying into it. So this would be wonderful for them, but for me and you, this is not a wonderful thing.
It seems like they're going to draw from this to stock the IBEW and they're not going to do. There's no big drive to bring in inside wiremen right now. They're bringing people in at these second and third tier levels. So that's what I see.
Well, now here's another thing. I'd like to say before anybody gets the wrong idea, I'm not against anybody trying to improve their family and trying to improve their lot in life, but there are ways to do it. This is, can you blame somebody who's worked non-union? They don't have the algebra they need. They don't have the classes they need. They didn't have the grades they needed in high school to get into the apprenticeship. Whether that's right or wrong is a different subject. But can you blame that guy whenever somebody from the union comes out and says, well, you're working in this jurisdiction and you're making $12 an hour. If you come over and work union, we're going to give you health benefits. We're going to give you whatever other fringe benefits these guys are going to get. We're going to give you a couple of dollars more on the hour. Okay, and we're going to see that you get regular pay raises as you go. Can you blame that guy on the street for saying, well, yeah, I'll do that? You can't blame him. He's trying to improve his situation.
He sure is.
This is from the top. This is not. This is nothing. Has nothing to do with the actual guys getting the jobs.
Yeah, the business managers in that area, they seem like they like it. Let me just play this to you a little bit again.
You can talk to any of our contractors, and they'll say they are more competitive with this tool. It's a very valuable tool, I think, and I think they like it.
I'm sure the contractors do like it, but he didn't sound like he was very opposed to it either.
No, he didn't. I saw that guy.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote that in my notes too. You're absolutely right, and nobody's had anything negative to say about this. This is not a real discussion of this. This is a commercial for it.
Right.
Maybe we're the other half of that commercial.
Yeah.
Because we're the voice against. We're
the ones. The inside wireman is the one that feels most threatened by this.
And damn well we should.
No, I think so. Yeah, for sure. Let me make a case for what's going on in Carolina a little bit for a minute. For years, like you said earlier, the Carolina electricians, you could see them all over the country, North and South Carolina and Florida even, and Georgia sometimes, and you would see them everywhere. And these people would go to the Carolinas. They would get an IBEW ticket with the idea that they would go, say, to the Great White North and make a lot of money. They go to New York, New Jersey, Las Vegas, Los Angeles. They go where the scale was high, and that's where they would make their money. They weren't interested in manning the jobs in their own area. They weren't interested in building a movement in their own area. They just used that area as a stepping stone to go somewhere else. So that people would get these IBEW cards, and they'd abandon the area. And now the work has come there. Contractors are going there. Businesses are moving there. There's work there, but now we got to figure a way to organize the area. Is this a step in the right direction? And can't we blame ourselves for not organizing that area, or blame the North Carolina hands even for not organizing that area back when they could have?
All right, I got a couple answers for you on that one. I got a comment that you may want to wind up cutting here after I get it out, but. There's an old saying that says when you go down to North Carolina to organize, they have two questions for you. Do you have $500 and do you have it with you?
Well, that's inflation, because when I was coming up, it was the same test, but it was only $50.
Well, I guess after everybody in the nation started hearing about it, how they can go down there and just plop down some cash on the table and walk out with a ticket, I guess the power of competition everybody's talking about so much, well, it started becoming more profitable to them, just like with any kind of competition, right?
Mm-hmm. When this thing, at the onset of this program, the CECW program, they talked about there's going to be a shortage of electricians in the next decade or so, and they needed a way to bring people into the industry rapidly.
I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of the locals that I've worked in, I don't know if this is the same nationwide, but they have a book system that goes, book 1 for the actual local members there, book 2 for the travelers, book 3 for anybody who has an IBEW out of a classification ticket, like a lineman. He can sign book 3 and get out as a wireman. And then book 4 is that if the job market is so wide open and they're having such a hard time getting the jobs filled, they can actually bring people off the street out of like a newspaper ad, the Hawking advertise, and say, we need people to perform electrical work for us. If you're unemployed, come down and sign our books and we'll get you a job. Okay, they've taken that, and instead they've said that the contractors have the right to directly recruit to these, what they call it, industry night open house meetings, for these guys to come in and actually sit down and interview.
Mm-hmm.
And then the contractor tells us, I want this guy. Let him in. Give him a classification, whatever it is. Send him to my job. The provision to bring in extra labor that was non-union off the street already did exist. It's called Book 4. So this is a sleight of hand or a distraction. They're playing this like they didn't have enough labor and manpower, but they did. They just didn't exercise that option because they wouldn't give a permanent status to a half classification.
Okay.
That's what this is really about on that.
Okay. It seems like that the IBEW, with these new programs and these incentives to recruit people at any cost and giving the NECA contractors a free hand and picking and choosing who comes in, and it's like they're setting themselves up more as an employment agency than a collectively bargaining type of union.
Well, let's don't forget that the amount of money that the IBEW locals make is determined by the wage packages. So, okay, they'll argue and bargain for us to get better living because it improves their standard of living. But yeah, you're right. As far as going out and representing.
The question was before we had this malfunction here was that there was the IBEW starting to resemble more of an employment agency than a union. It seems like collective bargaining. We're not really in a collective bargaining mode anymore. We're in an employment agency mode. The contractors can pretty much do anything they want, and they do. And it's a top-down run organization. It's not a grassroots rank-and-file organization anymore. Is this a fair statement?
That's absolutely a fair statement, yes. You expressed it better than I could have.
All right, let me just play this thing now, because this is part of the advertisement that you called it, right? The video. Let me play this segment here that says something about that.
The Carolina Initiative has given the NECA contractor the ability to choose who they want to work for them during a one-on-one interview with these new workers, after a little legwork has been done by the IBEW.
There's a number of people that are looking to better their lives in the industry as workers, and our contractors from NECA are looking for more skilled people to help them man the jobs that are here in the Carolinas. This is a good joint effort between NECA and IBEW. We as contractors are here to interview these applicants and try to get them into some semi-skilled work areas that can help better their bottom line for their jobs and their projects, and help the IBEW show what benefits it is to be a part of the organized labor movement.
We go out and visit all these open shop job sites and invite these people that are working at the trade to come out generally on a Thursday evening after hours and interview with a number of electrical contractors. And we don't promise them jobs, we just promise them opportunities.
It's like a job fair, and sometimes there's hundreds of guys that come in that I get to interview, and then from that night I could pick just the cream of the crop or find the guys that fit my needs. If I needed a specialty operator or someone that does warehouse work, office build out, tenant improvements, then I can interview guys that specifically have done that type of work, and that's what I'm looking for.
Once these CWs or CEs are brought into the IBEW and find their slot or level, they can choose to stay at that pay scale or join the apprenticeship program. Since the Carolina Initiative began, IBEW's members...
Okay, so we just heard that. It sounds like the IBEW local unions down there, they're sending people out to the non-union shops. They're recruiting people and telling them come to a job fair. And at the job fair, you have union contractors there who interview them, and they kind of pick from them who they might like to call from the non-union shops.
Yeah, well, let me give you an analogy on this.
Okay.
In order for somebody to come to America, they have to go, legally, they have to go through their citizenship process, their citizenship test, and all that kind of stuff. How is it that George Bush could propose the exact same thing for illegals, giving them amnesty, saying, oh, we need the cheaper labor rates and all that kind of stuff. And everybody's up in arms about it, but the IBEW International comes in and says, oh, let's do this. Let's bring these guys who used to, cross your gates, cross your pickets. They were illegals then. Let's bring them and give them amnesty and still give them half your wage. They're still going to compete with you, even though they're not within the gates. The barbarians are in the gates, and they're under our protection, too. We're creating a split in the rank and file. How is it better whenever the IBEW is instead of George Bush?
So you had a point about comparing George Bush to what they're doing in the IBEW right now.
Yeah, the hypocrisy of it, yes.
In this country and this world, we watch the news, we listen to the radio, we watch TV, we read the newspapers, and we go on the internet, and we keep hearing about we're having this global economic collapse, and we listen to our elected servants, the people running for office. They're talking about change and how they're going to stop this and that, but what we're seeing is that the CEOs of companies, the banking industry, the insurance industry, the health insurance industry, they're apparently more powerful than anybody that we've got in office right now. They're more powerful than the president. And the top CEOs of these corporations, they seem to wield this power with unaccountably. Why would we expect anything different from the top brass of an international union as big as the IBEW?
Because there's one. Well,
why can't?
As a theoretical, why would we expect?
Well, let me. I know it's a tough question. It's a broad question. If we can't bring our own politicians to do our will in Congress at the Capitol, how can we, the rank and file IBEW members, have our will? Have our people in the international office do our will or do what's best for us there? Isn't this across the board? This is something infecting the whole country, the whole world.
Yes, it is. And anytime you expect the guy above you to be your savior or your messiah, you're hopelessly deluded anyway. But the difference is, the IBEW, in theory, we have a voice. And it's not a split party. It's not Democrats, Republicans, or whatever. It's one party. It's the IBEW, and that's it. Okay? We don't have one man, one vote. If we had OMOV, then that would definitely correct the problem real quick. But we can't have that either.
We apologize to all the listeners out there. We just had a malfunction here in this recording process. And we were making some valid points there, and we kind of got interrupted. So we're going to pick it up right here, and hopefully we can make some sense out of it by the time it gets to you people. We were talking about sustainability. Can we sustain what we're doing right now the way we've been doing it the last 50 years? We've got a lot of old school people, myself included. Can we expect that we can have the same skill level at a nuclear powerhouse bending 5-inch rigid as the same person changing light bulbs in a laundromat and get the same scale? Can we? Is collective bargaining, is the idea of the wages we're making, is it sustainable if we keep that attitude? Brother Vegas.
I'll compare that to the gold standard. All right, the gold standard existed in the United States for a long time. Because what they said was the amount of work required to produce 1 ounce of gold was comparable to the amount of work required that ounce of gold purchased. Okay, so if you take the amount of guys it takes to run that 1 5-inch piece of rigid for 100 feet, the amount of man hours. Okay, do you hear something in the background here?
Yeah.
That,
Okay?
are you coming? Is there another sound coming through?
We're getting a little feedback there, that's all.
Okay. Anyway, it's a comparable thing. Like in the residential side of this, can you expect a guy to make $40 an hour working residential on a house? Well, when you think about it in realistic terms, if you have 8 man-hours in that house, $320 to wire house, oh, that ain't so bad, really. See what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so is the skill level possessed by the guys doing the work the same? Obviously not. But the amount of work that they turn out, you know, those are factors that can be determined by the market, and I don't think they're really that much far off from each other. When you look at the amount of work turned out in that hour compared to which job it's on.
Brother Vegas, let's say I'm an old school electrician, and I can remember the days when we had all the work, and we didn't really need a lot of the other work. We had plenty of industrial work and heavy commercial. We had all that, and we really didn't go after the work. But things changed. They started building lots of McDonald's. They started building lots of Wendy's and things like that, and garden apartments. There was work that was coming onto the scene that we weren't getting. We were operating under a set of laws that date back to the 30s and the 40s, like the Davis-Bacon law and things like that. Things changed, and we didn't change with them.
Well, now, hold on. Our objects were written back in the 30s and 40s. Actually, in the 30s.
The what?
Our objects were adopted in the 30s. They were written in the 1890s. Well, we come from that direction and say, well, you know, maybe we shouldn't seek an ever-increasing standard of living, and maybe we shouldn't value the individual. You know, just because it was written a long time ago doesn't mean it's not valid today. I hate to come off like I'm arguing with you all the time, but I do have a disagreement here, brother.
Well, I'd love to hear it because you know we want to hunt this dog down, and so let's hear what you got to say.
Well, all I'm saying is, let me think about this a second in the best way. Because an idea came up 100 years ago or 200 years ago, like our Constitution, for example, you know, those were the absolutes and the ideals those guys came up with when they wrote it. Has society changed? Yes. But have the ideals changed? They shouldn't have. If we give them up and we don't use them, they become worthless. It's the same thing with our collective bargaining, like you're talking about our wage package being, you know, by the time you add in fringe benefits, $50, $60, $70 an hour. All right. $50, $70 an hour on a public works job. You got to really look at who's paying the bill here. If the federal government's paying the bill, if the state government's paying the bill, then the cost is really not a concern for them. Your average mom and pop, or a young couple just got married and they're turning maybe $30,000 a year into their house. Are they going to have a problem with hiring me for $40 an hour for 3 months? Yeah. But if their panel on their house, the main breaker needs to be changed out, and I come out in 2 hours and change it and get it working right again, that's $150. They going to have a problem with that? I don't think so. Another thing is the nature of our work is temporary. We don't have jobs. We don't have a career. We have work. Our time off is factored into that as well.
Okay.
There's a lot of ways to look at this thing besides, the evil inside wireman is the scourge of the earth and he's the problem of all our economic problems here. Nobody else is proposing taking cuts. Oil hasn't taken a cut. Energy hasn't taken a cut. Food hasn't taken a cut. You know, retail goods haven't taken a cut. So I don't think that we should be the chosen boy sacrifice guy.
Yeah, we don't want to. We would rather be the cause of inflation than the victims of it.
I'd just rather have a decent life.
Yeah.
And cutting mine in half doesn't give me a decent life.
Yeah, I understand. You know, you train to be an inside wireman. You expect to be working as an inside wireman. You know, today I was saying on TV where the president, Barack Obama, was down in Georgia, and they announced the building of 2 nuclear sites down there. Did you see that?
I didn't see that.
That could open up a whole new era of work for the industrial electrician.
Sure it could.
That'd be great. I mean, right now we're looking for some big place, like some big work like that to show up, so we would have a place for our people to go. If they start building those around the country, that would sure help.
Now, another thing we was talking about earlier, maybe this is before the tape ran out on us because we're kind of long-winded here,
Yeah.
but we talked about the difference between a guy working on a nuke at a $75 an hour wage package versus a guy working on a house at a $75 wage package.
Yeah, I was just trying to lead up to that.
Well, if we turn out the amount of work, like on a nuclear powerhouse that's 5-inch rigid, well, for starters, we want to go find the rigid. We want to go somewhere and find the threaders, find the benders. The job's spread out over a half a square mile. So other factors in that. But suppose we ran 3 feet of rigid in a day. By the time everything was said and done and figured out, that amount of work on that wage, $875, $600. Okay. The same guy wiring a house, say it's a 1,200 square foot house. Say there's 2 guys in that house, and it takes them a day to wire that house. So in 2 days, you got $1,200 total label in wiring this house. For a house that goes for $120,000, I don't think $1,200 is too crazy of a number.
I agree, but the prices of houses is falling all the time, and the cost of materials going up and up. Copper's high. I don't know if we have the same profit margins in there we had, just a decade ago, 5 years ago.
It comes back to management.
Yeah.
It does back to management. If you can't manage your hands and you can't manage your time, for starters, don't blame me. But secondly, don't beg me, because you have guys that are working and their suck buddies on who don't know what they're doing, who waste time, there's 1,000 reasons why a job goes wrong. But there's only one reason why a job goes right, and that's good management.
Okay, we see the CWCE program coming, and we know we're inside wiremen. What do we see as a threat to us as inside wiremen from the CWCE program?
It's cutting our wages down to 3/4 or 2/3. And there's a 4-to-1 ratio between them and us, which means the Hall gets blessings to hire 4 of those guys for every one of us. It's an unfair labor practice. It's unfair competition.
Okay, I'm going to look at this thing a little broader. Like I said, we're in the middle of this big economic realignment of the world, and I don't want to belabor that too much, but things are changing economically. We have to change to the point that we're sustainable. Would you agree is that a fair statement anyway? To say that we got to change to the point that we're sustainable.
I think you need to define sustainability. I think that some areas can never be sustainable,
Okay.
like Carolina.
Let me say this then, and I think I've said it before. Can we realistically expect to make the same wages at a nuclear powerhouse as we do wiring a laundromat?
And I'm saying yes.
Well, I don't know. I don't know that we're going to make it that way. I really don't. And not to the point of argument, but let me say what I see the real threat to the CWCE program is to us is the fact that they are in our contracts. Okay, their scale is a function of our scale. Their contract is a function of our contract. Our JATC trains them. Why would we grow and build and contribute to a JATC that's going to train our replacements? Like we said earlier, the IBEW is divided into 4 general branches: the inside, the outside, the communication workers, and the railroad workers. We know that there's a whole ton of work there that's doesn't require the same skill level as a nuclear powerhouse. Why couldn't they just start their own unit, their own classification, and compete with that work amongst themselves? And the idea also would be to solicit small businesses for that, grow small contractors. Let the big contractors do the big work. That would be the industrial sector. Do you follow what I'm saying there?
I follow what you're saying on that. If you made them an entirely separate unit that was not allowed on the same jobs that we're on, it was not allowed to work alongside of us, they have a point there. If you could make the sizes of the buildings, like we had talked before, resort towns and tourist towns have a lot of hotels, a lot of areas that are bigger than a little 20-unit apartment project. And when you have those, a lot of the IBEW inside wireman work is in those structures.
Yeah, so we're talking about something like you have a Radio Shack, or a Circuit City, or a Subway, or a Kohl's department store. This is the type of work that we're looking at, that maybe they need their own unit now.
That's valid. And if that doesn't happen, another thing we need to do is build in the mandatory upgrade. If we give these guys a sub-journeyman status, then we need to make them within 2,000 hours or 3,000 hours, depending on what their skill level is when they come in. They have so many hours of work, and then they either have to take the journeyman inside wireman test and pass it, or take it, fail it, and stay off work for a couple of weeks so they study up and they can get past it, or they can't work in the union anymore.
That's if they were in our bargaining unit. What I'm speaking of is they would have their own bargaining unit, and their scale wouldn't be a function of our scale. Their contract wouldn't be our contract. Their JATC wouldn't be our JTC. If the IBEW recognizes they need a new branch of workers, a new classification of workers, they should have a separate bargaining unit for them. That's not what they've done here. What they've done is,
I see what you're saying. That's a good point.
What they've done is they've put their language in the inside wireman's agreement and made a straight line from a CE to an inside wireman. But we know what's going to happen. We know that there's going to be a whole lot of CECWs and not a whole lot of inside wiremen in about 10 years. We're going to see CECWs doing the industrial work. We're going to see them doing the nuclear powerhouses, the refineries, the things like that. That's the big damage here. They're starting off. It sounds like a nice program to get a lot of small work, and they identify all this small work, but we know in the long run where they could wind up just because they're in our contract. Right now they're saying 1-to-4 ratio. What do you expect in about 10 years then? If you had a 4,000 man local, you'd have say 3,500 CECW types and maybe 700 or 800 inside wiremen.
Right.
And what happens when you have a job like a nuclear powerhouse or something, and you need lots of workers? They're not going to be able to man them with just the available inside wiremen, and they wouldn't be able to maintain the ratios on the other jobs if the inside wiremen went to work on an industrial site. See? So we know where they're going to wind up. To me, that's the biggest threat. The fact that they've done this, they're using our structures, they're using the inside wireman structures to plant these seeds of destruction. That's what concerns me the most.
What concerns me the most is we have a bunch in Washington, D.C. who has consistently acted against our best interests. And they claim hidden secret knowledge, and they claim hidden secret whatevers. Okay? And they have no accountability to explain to us their reasoning. They have no reason for a national debate. It is unilateral. It's from them to us, and we have no say-so in the matter. That's the problem that I see over all of this.
So you feel like the doors are closed to you there, huh?
Absolutely.
I think that your feelings are felt throughout the IBEW. Why do we feel so powerless?
It goes back to classism, brother. You can call it politics, you can call it whatever you want to call it. If a guy like me or a guy like you's on a job, and we demand that the outhouse gets cleaned once a day and some cold water and a hand wash station, we're the radicals and we're sent down the road. But we don't have our eyes down, our mouths shut, our tools on, and our dues paid.
Okay. So anyway, I think to sum up, we see a CWCE program coming. We see it getting entrenched. We see it coming with some very innocuous interests, like doing some of the less skilled work. but we also see it as a threat because we see that they're becoming part of our trust funds, the NEBF for sure, the pension, annuity, health and welfare to follow. We see their scale as a function of our scale. We see them working on the same jobs as us. And that's probably the most threatening thing. We know that eventually that they're like a small wave right now, but in the long run, there are replacements, and that's what we see.
That's what I see.
And on the other hand, if we saw them in their own units or another branch of the IBEW where they did not work on the same jobs as us, where they weren't contributing to our trust funds, where our JTC wasn't training them, and they would be like a friendly nation to us at that point. They'd be IBEW members, and they have their own separate bargaining unit and everything else. We probably feel less threatened and safer.
I think you're right.
Thank you for joining us, and at this time I want to make it clear that we don't have all the answers here. We don't even have all the questions. And if we had all the questions, we still wouldn't have all the answers. We know there's other points of view out there, and we know we've stirred up a few thoughts. We've probably got people that are that could very well differ from us, and we'd be happy to hear from them. We'd like to hear from people at all levels, the IO, the local union. You're all invited to participate. This is the whole idea of this little discussion here, was just to create some dialogue about what's going on in the IBEW. It's certainly not all the answers. I want to thank this brother for stepping forward and saying the things he did here today.
Anytime, fine line. And like I said, I appreciate your efforts on what you're doing as well.
I wish some more brothers would step forward, and maybe we can get a more cohesive approach, because we're looking into a bleak future right now. We've got a lot of unemployment. We've got unemployment checks running out. We got people losing their pensions, their health insurance, and their houses all at the same time. We need some dialogue. We need some thoughts, brothers, and we need the people higher up to hear us, and we need them to talk to us. And we're talking to you. We're talking to you from here. We need you to talk back, and we're waiting for some answers. That's this edition of the Forum Response.